Hey folks, in this interview, we're going to be talking about the secret world of corporate event photography. This is TWIP. Hey, welcome back to This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today I'm talking with Gustavo Fernandez. He is a corporate event photographer, but he didn't start out that way. We're going to talk about his transition from the world of weddings into corporate events and how he's able to make that transition and also generate a reliable, sustainable, repeatable business. Gustavo, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Thanks, Frederick. Doing great. I appreciate the time and looking forward to the interview.
Yeah, me too. I love doing these kinds of interviews because it turns out the best interviews for me to do are the ones that I'm actually interested in. So if you go back into the history of TWIP, the best ones are the ones where I'm like, yeah, I want to know about that. I want to know.
What's he talking about?
Yeah, well, it's the question. I ask questions that somebody legit would want to know versus just like, well, if you were a tree, what would make you, what kind of tree would you be? But let's dive into it. So when you and I first met, you were crushing it as a wedding photographer. And you've always been sort of you had that entrepreneur vein running through you, and you applied that to your wedding photography business. And now you're doing it on corporate events. Talk about that world, the wedding photography world, and why you sort of stepped away from it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I started back, it's been almost over 11 years now. Wow. So a long time. I was looking at my notes. It's like, wow, I met you at like 2009 with Sarah France in either New York at Photo Plus or WPPI. So I forget.
Wow.
One of those.
You're aging me, man. You're aging me.
Exactly. But no, I came from a background in pharmaceutical sales with Johnson & Johnson, was having a great time. I was looking for something else to transition to, and photography was my hobby. And, that's when kind of everything started to pop in social media, and that world of wedding photography kind of looked really sexy and fun and all these communities. So, that top 10 wedding photographers photography issue came out. Gosh, I forget what the magazine was, but and Bambi Cantrell was listed on there. And I was like, oh, who's this lady? She lives in Pleasant Hill, and that's literally where I live. So I looked her up. She had a workshop coming up with some random guy named Jerry Guionis.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, whatever, some Australian dude, no big deal. So yeah, I got to meet Bambi, got to eventually work with Bambi, got to, grow with her, become her main second shooter, got to slowly grow my business as I left the corporate world, and, spent, many years doing that and just kind of building that photography business. I mean, I started basically assisting everybody I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
So I would help, all sorts of people, from Kenny Kim to Roberta Valenzuela to Christine Bentley, to, of course, Bambi, to Jim Garner, actually. Love that guy. So yeah, just helping out, being, helping other people out. I got to learn tons and, help me, and build my wedding photography business.
And they say that's the best way to learn how to operate in the wedding photography world is to work with somebody who's further down the road than you are, right? And assist them, and then sort of eventually branch off on your own and do your own thing. So let's talk about that branching off. So
sure.
We won't make this too much about the origin of Gustavo, but so you branched off, started shooting on your own, successfully. Whenever I saw your name and your brand, in my head at least, it was always synonymous with somebody who understands marketing and business and how to work with clients and how to talk to clients versus someone who's just sort of figuring it out and copying other people and hoping it works for them. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would say that, coming from 10 plus years in corporate, and having a business background and an MBA, that business is definitely one of my favorite topics, and marketing, and how can you get that name out there, and how do you make this a real business versus, something that people are doing for fun? How do you support a family? How do you support yourself? Mm-hmm. So that's definitely always been an interest to me, and I think it's just key. It's key to work for other people, see how they're doing it, see how you like of what they're doing and not doing, and then, kind of mold that into a business that you like to do.
Yeah. So then let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your transition from straight up wedding event photography into corporate events? Why the change? Why not? I mean, if you sound like you had a laundry list of contacts and friends in the industry, why transition away from that into something that's relatively unknown?
Sure. I quickly noticed, one of the first places I started looking for additional business was venues, and why venues, with wedding planners, for example, which is kind of one of the sexy places that wedding photographers go to look for. Why? Because everybody wants that high-end wedding. Everybody wants to have that pretty photos of a bride that spent a lot of money and, those perfect pictures of that, wonderful venue. So, the thing that I quickly found out, these wedding planners typically have maybe 12, maybe 20 weddings at max, or maybe just even a handful. There's a lot of wedding planners that are, not necessarily full time. So what I quickly found out is, they might hire you for one wedding. Maybe they might hire you for two weddings, after putting in that significant work of networking with them for a couple of years and getting in front of them and just sharing, images and all these type of things. You might get that one wedding and then, you're just not the right fit for those. You're not going to get those 12 weddings. You're not going to get those 20 weddings from that planner. You might get one or two a year. So then I turned around and went, well, gosh, venues, if I can get on a preferred vendor list, venues like a hotel, for example, like the Fairmont Hotel, which is one of my favorite hotels here in San Francisco, 365 days a year, they're having events. Mm-hmm. So, how can I reach out to them? How can I connect with them and talk about other events outside of weddings? And what happened was, it actually happened naturally. I didn't necessarily start talking to them about that. I basically started getting referred, by the planners at the venues. So they're like, oh, we have a great photographer. He's, very polished, will show up well dressed, easy to get along with, mm-hmm. super fun. Some of those characteristics that, I wanted to portray and was already portraying, they saw that as a benefit for a corporate event. Why? Because a lot of times these days you'll see the hipster photographer with the hat and the cutoff jeans and the tattoos, and nothing against all that. But, I portray a different, level of person or business person, actually, where I'm showing up in a suit with no tie, showing up well shaven, which today, of course, not today.
I mean, you got to show up for the gig, right? I mean, if you show up for like an Apple corporate event and it's a stockholders meeting or something, they don't want a rock star there. They want you want to blend in with the crowd and be the guy with the camera, right?
Well, it's funny. One of my favorite stories is I got many years ago, I got a call from Visa, and they said, hey, we have an event tomorrow. We just found out our photographer has blue hair. Are you free? I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad somebody had blue hair.
That's awesome.
But, I had a great event, and it was a high-end event and a super nice venue, super nice restaurant. But, perfect example, I'll talk about a job I just finished yesterday. It was an executive level job. There was top executives from Apple, from GM, from Aramark there. It was only 65 people. The planner that recommended me, she goes, yeah, I thought of you. It's like, you're the only person I can think of that's polished, always well dressed, can speak to a CEO level type, person, and easy to work with. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of things that are not too complicated, but unfortunately, not many people kind of provide these days.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought about it from that perspective of, because we talk about gear, we talk about, developing your personal style, post-processing, all that stuff. But when you're doing these kinds of events, I would argue even weddings, depending on the level of the wedding, right? You need to show up with your A game, right? And it's not about you. Like if you're like, okay, I'm going to build my personal brand, and my personal brand is rock star, ripped up jeans, fedora, sunglasses, all this stuff. You could do that, but you're limiting yourself to people who want that kind of photographer, right?
100%. And the clientele I want NASDAQ, I want Bank of America, I want JP Morgan, which are some of my clients. Yeah. And they call me because of that. It's like, you're super easy to work with. You just handle it. You just take good care. That a lot of times people don't think about is like, you're just one more phone call that planner has to make. If they can just check that off the box and just move on and just like keep it simple, it's like they're happy. They got bigger things to deal with, like, staging or what the seating charts and all these very complex things. versus just hiring a photographer that they can count on, that's going to show up on time, it's going to show up well dressed. It's not going to, be a nuisance running around in front of the stage type of person.
Well, how do you let's talk a little bit about the creative differences between the two genres of photography. Wedding, they're both event photography, right? But very different kinds of event photography, weddings and corporate events. From a creative standpoint, you like you said, you've been around the block in the wedding world. There are some really skilled people like Bambi Cantrell and Jerry Jonas and all these people that have the signature style of work. You can almost tell their work when you see it. Is the same thing? Do we see the same kind of artistic flavoring in the corporate event space?
Yes and no. I'll start with definitely the wedding photography. Starting in wedding photography is one of the best experiences I've ever had, and I would definitely suggest people to try that. And as you know, wedding photographers are pretty much the best photographers out there. Yeah. Why? Because we get thrown into every type of lighting situation, and we just got to deliver on the fly and just make it happen and just move on, and take care of so many other things at once. And it's just running and gunning. And can you make this work? So with the corporate events, it's a little bit simpler. You're getting you have lighting, you have, although it's just as challenging sometimes, but I would definitely say it's a little bit simpler. For a lot of the events that I do, are highly produced. They have, really nice stages, they have really nice lighting companies, they have full on production. So, the challenge is then, how do you make it look interesting? How do you make it look different? How do you make it look like something, that they can use online, or they can use on their Twitter account, they can use on their social media, which is where my images are ending up a lot of the times. It's like they're going to use it on social and whatnot. And it's pretty exciting, like being shared on JP Morgan's Twitter account, Jamie Dimon's photos, that I just took an hour ago. It's definitely pretty cool. But being able to deliver that's definitely, a challenge, because again, constraint in time, making sure that these CEO, these very high net worth individuals are looking good, and you're giving them something creative that the marketing team can share. Does
it feel a little bit like a cross between a wedding and a rock concert? Because like shooting a concert, or like some sort of musical event where there's a stage, there's a lighting crew and all that stuff, and you have to be the photographer to be able to capture that as they're doing lighting changes on stage, but then also move around and get the guests and do all that stuff. Is it all that together?
I'd say it's the same shot list if you think about it as a wedding, right? Like, how can you show what happened that day? How can you show that story of that event, to that planner, to that, event, to say somebody else gets hired to run that event next year? Like, how can they look at those images and go, oh, wow, this is everything that they did at this event? So it's definitely a challenge in that way. I would say it's way more scripted. So that's the beauty of it. There is a schedule, that they're going to speak for an hour. You're not going to speak for 30 minutes. There's going to be a break. You're going to do some candidates. So you're definitely a little bit more prepared, and it's a little bit more, relaxed per se. It's, you can go, pretty heavy for the first, 20 minutes. So it's like, okay, I can relax now and start getting, some of the creatives for the next 10 minutes, because say it's a 30-minute, talk and whatnot. So yeah.
That's interesting. All right. Like here's the big question before we move on to the next thing. I want to talk about training and that kind of thing. But the money, right? So in the wedding world, some of those names that you dropped before, they're making a big bucket of cash for each wedding that they do. And if they're doing, just a couple a year, it's a lot of money. How does the money situation or the mechanics differ for corporate events versus doing, let's call it medium to high end weddings?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. One of the things that people, they fall in love with that big number, And I'll throw like your average, very good San Francisco wedding photographer is probably charging about 10 grand these days. And of course, that sounds very sexy and very high. And it's, wow, that's only one day of work. What people don't think about is, okay, it's a year to a year and a half relationship, from the day that you book that client to the engagement session, to then the back and forth, to then, all the communication, to then, the wedding day, to then the editing, to then meeting with the client to maybe deliver to the album design, to then maybe meeting the client to deliver the album, and to, any other things. And divide that up by that $10,000. So, on average, you're spending 30 to 40 hours on that one client. So it's not necessarily that it's just for 1 days of work. I mean, I still have clients from 3, 4, maybe even 5 years now that haven't done their albums.
Oh, wow. Really?
So that's one of the big challenges, with the weddings, is kind of like a very long-term relationship.
Oh, Whereas that would drive my ADD crazy, man. Like, literally.
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. But, that's the thing. And then with weddings, it's definitely a significant challenge with communication and workflow, and how do you manage these 30 to 40 to however many clients you might need to get every year? How do you manage all these conversations? How do you stay on top of all that? So that's one of the biggest things that people don't think about. They see that sexy number, but they don't necessarily see what goes behind that.
Yeah.
With corporate, it's definitely a lot simpler. It's more transactional. It's like, we need, say, 3 hours. We need 8 hours of photography. How much is that? And then when can you deliver that? So yesterday I shot for, actually, this was not typical, but I shot for 12 hours. It was an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Actually, it probably started about 9 a.m., but I, showed up at 8. And I'm going to probably spend a few hours on editing, and I'll deliver that, and I'm done. I'm done until they hire me again. So That's the beauty of corporate and I could also outsource that. A lot of times I'll edit that myself just because it's just way simpler. I shoot everything in camera. That's my goal, is to make sure it looks 5% to 99% there. It's just a quick adjustment of maybe the brightness, maybe the color balance, sync all that up and export. So it's definitely a simpler and shorter back-end process. But the beauty of it is that we haven't necessarily talked about is they fall in love with you and then they want you back.
Oh, the repeat business. Yeah. How does that work? So like once they love you, right? Sure. I would imagine, because having you and I have both worked in corporate America, once you find the widget that can do a certain thing to your expectations and within your budget, you tend to go back to that widget over and over again. Right. So that repeat business, how is that different? Or the mechanics of the repeat business there are different than the mechanics of the repeat business on the wedding side, where they may call you back for the daughter's wedding or, the baby's first steps or something like that.
Let's back up. What does it take to get that first wedding, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have the pretty the pretty website.
Yeah.
Got to have the great blog, have the great social media, the Instagram, the Twitter, the whatever people are watching these days. Got to go out and network. Got to go out and take care of those planners. Got to go out and take care of those venues. Got to take extra photos at every, make sure that you got to take care of the client, of course. Then when you do that wedding, you got to make sure you're taking photos of the caterer, the venue, the flowers. You're pretty much, your planner or that venue is expecting photos from you also. So then you're having to take care of all those people to then I got to deliver this, these photos to this client, and I got to make sure that the client's happy that day. Then I got to make sure that I deliver all the photos to the venue people. Then I got to deliver the album eventually. So it's just, there is so much involved in just getting that one client and taking care of that one client as compared to that corporate client, that I think that's where the beauty is. With a corporate client, so back to, your original question is like, okay, so how do you get that client? So for me, I get most of my clients through word of mouth. So I take care of my venues. So I used to do weddings at those venues. Now I do pretty much all corporate events. So they just refer me. So every time I get a job and it's a great client. So for example, JP Morgan. How did I get JP Morgan? Rosewood Sandhill is a very high-end hotel south of here in Menlo Park. And they referred me to JP Morgan. And JP Morgan called me, and it was a small executive, high level. It was the board. It was actually the board and the president having some meetings with some local people. And I went and captured it. Easy, simple job. Really got along with the planner. The planner's like, oh my God, you're wonderful. We have some events coming up. We'll just call you when we're back in town. And that's now turned into, I shoot JP Morgan Healthcare every year here in San Francisco, which is, the top healthcare conference out here. I shoot their conference in Boston. I shoot another conference at the Ritz Half Moon Bay. And then there's something coming up now at Auberge. So for the last 3 years, she just calls and goes, hey, here are the dates. I don't even know what time we start. Like usually I text her the day before. It's like, oh, hey, what time are we doing this again?
That's
Just
so
to make
cool.
sure I'm on time. So, you got to think about it from her perspective. It's like, oh my gosh, he's going to do a great job. He's going to deliver. He's easy to work with. My staff loves him. It's just a lot easier. And that's my goal with every client. I want to gain that trust and become that person that they don't want to think about any other photographer. They just want to think of, you know what, we'll just fly Gustavo to Boston. Much easier than me have to deal with somebody new that doesn't know what's going on, that doesn't know how to work with my social media team and whatnot. So
take that risk, right?
Exactly. So compare all those things you have to do to then get that one wedding client, to then have to do that every year having to find 30 to 40 new, wedding clients, versus for me every year, I just want to maybe gain a handful of new clients that will use me 5 to 10 to 20 times. So that's my goal. So
that's awesome. Yeah. What does the money look like, to the extent that you can share? Is it, like you mentioned before, it could be 3 hours, could be 5 hours, could be 8 hours or 10 or 12 hours. Is it an hourly thing, or is it a gig based thing? They just hire you at a certain amount and you stay there until it's over. How does that piece work?
Yeah. So typically for me, it's just an hourly rate. So I just charge whatever you charge for, whatever you feel comfortable charging for an hourly rate, whatever is going to, support your work. But, I try to have like a couple hour minimum or a 3 hour minimum on the weekends and whatnot. And yeah, it's like, hey, we need you for 8 hours. Okay. What's X times 8? And this is how much it is. Sometimes, of course, I'll discount it a little bit depending if it's a little slower this month or not, like we all typically do. But yeah, I just try to stick to my number and go from there. My number is a little bit higher than most people are at. But I try to keep it up there because I want to do those higher level jobs. I want to do those, executive level events where they want that person that, that is going to be that specialist, that is going to be, well trained and well versed, and be part of the team.
And is billing different on the wedding side versus the corporate event side? Like, do you get, I know, so depending on the photographer, obviously, but some photographers will charge 50% X number of months before the event, and then before they show up at the wedding, you got to have paid the difference. Right. Some allow that to go all, after the event. How does it work in the corporate world?
It's pretty simple. I mean, there's no money up front. I just get paid within 30 days after the event. Okay, cool. Some photographers like to get paid before. I mean, in my 11 years, I've never not gotten paid, knock on wood here. Yeah. But it's just, they're corporations. They're going to pay you. They might be a little slower than normal, but that's the beauty of the recurring income. I am getting hired on constantly by certain people. So that money keeps kind of slowly flowing in. So that's the beauty of that. Like, it's not like, oh my gosh, wedding season, and then what do I do now? Mm-hmm. For me, it's like, I looked at I did a report the other day in my QuickBooks, and I go, oh, what's the slowest month that I have that I can maybe take some time off and maybe go to a beach or whatever, for a month and just kind of regroup. And I was like, oh wow, I don't have a slow month. They were all pretty much just
what's a month look like? Are you running out there on a daily basis, or is it every weekend? Is it every couple days, or what's the frequency
no
of the
weekends
events
anymore, which is a beautiful thing. I mean, once in a while, of course. Yeah, I do some social events, for example, like a 70th birthday party that I did one weekend, but it's very, I had to re-find my friends, because I was like, hey guys, I have my weekends now. Can you please put me back on the invitation list for hanging out? But every day is different. Again, yesterday was a 12-hour day. Today I'm just catching up on work here in the office. I had a meeting with a lunch meeting with an event planner, and but no, every day is different, and that's part of what I love. It's just the challenge or not the challenge. It's just that every day is different, and it's just super fun, and I like to keep it fun and moving.
That is fantastic, man. All right, I want to put the landing gear down and bring it in for a landing now. So what people always want to know, photographers, right?
Sure.
What is he shooting with? Is it the same gear that you shoot a wedding with? And do you need full frame? Or are you going micro four thirds? Or you flying drones around these events? What are you doing?
Everybody, I say it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Whatever you're comfortable with is the main thing. I shoot Canon. I'm looking at these mirrorless cameras and falling in love slowly but surely.
Yeah.
I listened to your interview with my good friend Robert Evans. I need to call him. It's been a long time since I caught up. It's like that. Those Sonys are looking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Partly for just, smaller too, easier to get around, and I can get a smaller bag. But no, I shoot with a 5D Mark III still. Gosh, those guys have gone through they've probably gone through 3 sensors each.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're workhorses. I haven't bought any new stuff in probably
so you're a real photographer then. So they're the photographers that are on the upgrade train. Like, I know I've only pressed the shutter on this camera 1,500 times, but now this new one's out. I need to go get that one. You're making your dogs work for their money, right?
And those are my favorite people because I buy those cameras off of them on Craigslist.
That's awesome.
I mean, all my main lenses and one of my cameras I bought off Craigslist. It's like, wait a second, why am I buying this new when there's plenty of people here in the Bay Area? And there's also a lot of tech people with money, and they buy these cameras like, oh my God, this is so big and heavy. And I'm going to buy Leica instead, which I had one of those actually.
Wow.
And yeah, so there's like no need, but no, they're just work. I actually have to send my stuff in today. I think, I got to get them out today to CPS because one of my lenses is acting up. I was like, oh my gosh, I should buy a new lens because, again, I looked at my Lightroom for this year. It was like 200,000 photos already. It's like, okay, come on, guys.
Oh, I love that. It sounds like a dream. That genre sounds like a. For people who like that sort of running around and doing the events, but without, like you mentioned, all that overhead of, brides, and the meetings and the questions and the follow up, and then the lack of follow through on getting the albums and hunting down your money, all that stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very emotional time too.
Yeah. You can't mess up.
Exactly, can't mess up, so that's tough. I just love that. And transactional sounds like a terrible word, but it's just a lot simpler. This job that I booked yesterday took 10 minutes to book. It took an hour actually because I was referred by the catering company that was hired to run this event. And then she referred me to the catering manager that was going to actually run the event. And then she called me and we talked on the phone. It's like, oh, cool. You know what? You're the perfect fit. I've met you before at many of the network events, and that's the other thing. You got to get out there. But and then she's like, I'm going to connect you right now. So I emailed the client back and go, hey, I'm here in the office if you'd like to chat. This lady's an old school lady. She's been around, for a long time. And once you get up to these higher level events, you are going to see these seasoned people that have experience have experienced it all. So with a quick phone call, they know, am I talking to a professional? Am I not? And is this person, going to be the right fit for me? Yeah. So, and it's like, oh, it sounds great. Not even a 10-minute talk, maybe 5 minutes, like send me the contract. I'll send it to their legal and we're good to go. And I was like,
I love that, man. Well, congratulations on this. Yeah. This is fantastic. So then the last sort of topic I want to broach with you is, so you've cracked this nut. You mentioned that there aren't many people that are doing this. So, and you mentioned, you kind of hinted at before that you're going to start training people or planting a flag and positioning yourself as the expert in this space, which sounds like you already are. How is that going to work for you? What does that look like?
No, I mean, I just want to get out there and talk about it. I'm definitely planting the flag because it's a great business. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's just a very good business, solid money, not that crazy stress of the weddings. You have your weekends are mostly free. It's just, I think, another opportunity in the world, that people don't talk about very often at our big conferences. I submitted to speak at WPPI, so we'll hear next week. So see what happens. But, you just don't hear. You only hear about some of those sexy, jobs like photographing models or photographing these destination weddings in Italy and whatnot. So, what are one of the favorite business people that I love are the people that I've never heard of and I don't need to know about or don't even barely know about, or nobody knows about. But they have families, they do vacations, and they have a profitable photography business. Like one of my great friends, Jim Fidelibus in Walnut Creek. He's got an amazing family, an amazing home. His 2 kids are out of college already. He's got all the toys. We go whitewater rafting once in a while. He's got the RV. He's got the studio downtown. It's like, I love those type of people. It's like they're just out there. They're being a working photographer,
Yeah.
and I think there needs to be more of those doing the stuff that we do. He does do a lot of weddings though. He's done over 1,000 weddings.
Wow.
Because he hashtags the number, and he's like, oh, here's the photo from the parents' wedding, and now I'm doing the kids' wedding. So more power to him. I'm past that.
Yeah.
But no, I just want to get the word out there that this is a great business. It's great clients if you can get some of these great corporations. And yeah, and it's just that beauty of that recurring income. I mean, there's JP Morgan, there's NASDAQ. I'm shooting there 2-3 times a month. Their local office here, they do a ton of events. So it's just becoming that go-to person and being able to, maybe get 2 to 3 handful of clients. And that's all you need. And that's all you need to do.
That's
so. Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's inspirational, man. That is really cool. So if people want to dive in and look at some of the work that you've done, or if someone's watching this and they want to hire you for one of their events, what's sort of the back cave for Gustavo?
So you mean like, how do they find me, basically?
Yeah, how do they find you? Like, where's your website? Where's the blog? Is it social? Right. I know a lot of photographers are using just Instagram, these days. What's the way that people get to you?
Well, that's a funny conversation. I mean, for photographers to get to me, it's just my website, GustavoFernandez.com. But, the thing that I was thinking about in the background is I barely have a website. It's a template. It's crappy. It's maybe has 10 or 20 photos.
Interesting.
And, and some headshots. And I just slapped it up there. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Like when I mentioned before, like, the wedding photographer has the blog, the pretty site, the sexy looking design, the sexy looking logo, and this and that. Mm-hmm. For me, it's more of is it place saver? What's the right word?
It's a placeholder. Yeah.
Placeholder. Excuse me. Thank you. It's more of a placeholder. It's like, oh, here's me. Here's photos of Joe Biden at JP Morgan. Here's photos of this other celebrity at this event. Here's other photos of these very corporate looking things. Here's Chevron in the background. There's NASDAQ. And for my client, in my mind, they just go there and they click 2 or 3 times. Oh, duh. He's worked for these people. Next, move on. We can hire him. They trust him. We can trust him. So the same thing with my website. I don't have a blog, or I don't have, and then my Instagram, I barely Instagram. Luckily, I've actually done it twice in the last 2 weeks, but that was like 3 months past due. So that's the thing for me. For me, my clients are not necessarily, they're not shopping around for wedding vendors. They're not spending days on Instagram looking for that perfect wedding photographer that's going to have their gorgeous, sexy look that they're looking for. For me, it's like, does this person present professionally? Does he have the quality of work that we need? And if we call him and email him, will he respond and pick up the phone in a timely manner? Mm-hmm. This is one of the things that I talk about a lot, is going back to the basics. It's like people don't respond, within the hour, or they don't pick up the phone anymore, unfortunately, because of our large spam calls.
Yep.
I was just walking back from my lunch with my friend, the event planner, and she goes, oh, you picked up that call? I was like, I pick up every call. And it was a robocall. And I was like, you just never know when there might be $40,000, $50,000 behind that call.
Right.
And that happened to me 2 years ago with Forbes magazine called me. And who are the people that love to pick up the phone and call? Those senior event planners, those very experienced people that come from an era where they call people. So they want to hear the people on the phone. They want to hear if I can trust this person. They want to make sure that person's going to deliver for me. So I pick up every robocall or every call that comes to my phone. And of course, I'm always responding, as fast as I can on email. Because they're just going to keep calling the next person or emailing the next person. So.
Yeah, dialing for dollars. Yeah, down the list. But if someone's watching this and they're like, this is great. I'm really intrigued. I want to dive in deeper and maybe try this in my local area. Sure. One of the things that I'm hearing is like you have your placeholder site with Joe Biden and big name companies, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 10 companies on there. Right. How do they do it? Right. So, in the wedding photography world, it's okay, shadow somebody, second shoot, or offer your services for free and build up your wedding just to show that you have the chops to shoot a wedding. And then, you sort of go from there. How does that piece work in corporate events?
Sure. I mean, they're probably already shooting weddings. They're already working with venues. So typically there's a different planner for corporate events. So I would ask for that introduction. If you're already shooting weddings, like, hey, can I talk to the person who runs the corporate events? They're typically somebody totally different in a totally different department. So that's an easy in because you've already worked there, you're vouched for, you're already part of sort of the crew there. They can introduce you there. If you're starting kind of from scratch, some of the simple things. I mean, I'm a member of my local chamber of commerce. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of SF Travel, which is our local San Francisco Visitors and Conventions Bureau. I'm a member of AMA, the American Marketing Association. There's like a few, there's a lot of things, but basically you can start with the chamber and start with your Visitors and Conventions Bureau and your venues. I mean, I think your venues are just going to be the key place. Corporate event planners are a big contact for, connecting with these large corporations because they're the ones that, say Coca-Cola from Atlanta wants to come to San Francisco and bring their sales team for their incentive trip. First thing they do is they call it DMC. What's a DMC? DMC is a destination management company. What is that? Basically it's a corporate event planner. Mm-hmm. So they go, hey, we got 100 people. We need 5 days at hotels. We want to do 2-3 days in wine country. We want to do other exciting things. Can you put a proposal together for us? And we'd like all that photographed. So if you're out there networking and, going to those chamber of commerce and going to and I totally forgot, you also have MPI, Meeting Professionals International. You also have ILEA, International. Oh, I can send you the link.
Send me all these links if you wouldn't mind. I'll put them in the post.
So there's actually, those two are the main ones. ILEA and MPI are the two kind of meeting professionals. So all the corporate event planners, a lot of wedding planners go to, all the venue people, that's where they all network. Oh. And that's where they all meet that lighting guy. They all meet that, photo booth person. They all meet that florist. That's where they all come together every month. There's always a talk and whatnot, or there might be just a regular networking.
Oh, they meet monthly. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So very active, getting involved with those groups, like trying to get on the board or just being a part of the committees. That's where you get to really connect with these people, learn about their businesses, learn about their needs, help them out with some photos, which is, everybody always needs photography. So, I mean, over the years, I've done tons of, free, like, hey, you guys need some headshots for your team? Do you need some nice photos of your flowers? Just let me know, and just being a resource and taking care of those other vendors.
Yeah, that is fantastic, man. So what is the next step look like for your business? I mean, is it evolving into taking on more of organizing and planning events and photography then becomes a component of it? Or are you just going to go full on and, do that one thing, photography, mm-hmm. and focus and just keep getting awesome and bigger and more clients at that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just focusing on getting a few more of those keystone clients. Yeah. Okay, I have JP Morgan, I have NASDAQ, I have Wells Fargo. How can I get 2 or 3 more of those keystone clients where they're bringing me, X amount of dollars a year? So that's kind of my next goal, is to try to find a few of those. I mean, I met somebody at the recent Chamber of Commerce meeting that could pretty much change my life. He goes, oh, the photographer that does all our headshots for, X insurance company nationwide, their team just broke up. And we're currently looking, and I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah, exactly. Your pupils turned into dollar signs at that moment.
Exactly. It's like, wait, I can just retire, or that could be my one client, right? It could be. And so ideally, I'd like to find a handful of those clients like that, where I can, be that company that they call on. Of course, I do have a few people that I outsource and train, and, they shoot some of those events for me. So as I build more of that presence and get more and more work, building that team under me and just making sure that I take care of my top clients. And then when that smaller event, say like a university alumni reunion, which I get a lot of those 2-3 hour simple events, I can outsource that to my team and just continuing to, be able to do the business development to find those key clients.
Yeah, you sound like you really love what you're doing, man. Am I reading it wrong, or do you really love this stuff?
Of course. No, it's a blast. It's super exciting. Every day is new and different. And heck, I even get to learn a lot of stuff because when you're in these high level events and they're talking about things that there's not even out there in the public, it's super cool. I mean, yesterday I had, this company, the people from Apple talking about how things are changing and how, all these statistics about certain things that they talked about. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
At
Being
the end of the
being
day,
the fly on the wall, right? Yeah, I'm sure.
Exactly.
I'm sure you, as a photographer, as part of the contract, have to sign an NDA or something. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of times, but funny enough, a lot of times they don't. They just trust me to make sure that you're good. But for me, the beauty of it is people say it's like, oh wow, pharmaceutical sales corporate, that's so different. And now you're a photographer. It's like, no. At the end of the day, it's all about people.
Yeah.
So that's what I love. I love interacting. I love connecting. I love just having a good time.
This is people doing different things. Here's a final question though. So put you on the hot seat. What's one of the more embarrassing moments that you've had in any of your events or your travels, etc.?
Gosh, embarrassing moments.
Yeah. Or have there been any?
I don't necessarily think, I mean, other than the other day, like the pants ripped and I'm like, really? I just started this event. Like, what am I going to do? Luckily, I'm wearing dark underwear.
I was going to say, did you have bright yellow underwear on or something?
No. So I was able to survive that, but that's the only one that comes to mind. One of the key things that, you think about is backup, it's one of the things people don't talk about enough. But yesterday my 24-70 was acting up and it kept shutting down on me, and I was able to work through it. But I have 2 cameras, several lenses, and there's just unfortunately a lot of these newer photographers are not prepared for something that might happen, and that might be an embarrassing thing, and that client will never call them back again. So being prepared is just super key. Therefore, that saved me for any embarrassing moments. I mean, a lot of times I just have that other camera sitting there, and it's happened at least 2 or 3 times where the camera locks up and go, oh, you know what? Let me run over there. 2 seconds later, I'm back on track, and here we go. Yeah. So being prepared has definitely, I haven't had to have those embarrassing moments or anything going wrong.
That's good, man. Awesome. Gustavo Fernandez, man, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I kind of want to start doing events in Sacramento or something. It's
hey, it's nice and warm over there. Why not? It's a good town.
Yeah, because I don't have a huge affinity for weddings, but I like people, and I like obviously photography.
Sure.
It sounds like a happy medium right in the middle there with some sustainable recurring income.
100%.
Yeah, love it. So I will be reaching out to you just so, we'll do a consultation session, and I'll buy you a fancy lunch in San Francisco or something.
Of course, anytime. And thanks again, Frederick, for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's been great knowing you for many years and our conversations over the years. So appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. Anytime. You're always welcome on This Week in Photo.
All right. Thanks, brother.
All right. See you later, man.
Bye.
This is Twitter.